Number 10. Francois de Maurier. While working on a flight from Philadelphia to Hartford, Connecticut back in 1962, a 29-year-old stewardess named Francoise de Maurier noticed a whistling noise coming from the rubber seal surrounding her service door toward the end of the plane. The sound was caused by air escaping from the pressurized cabin, which isn't supposed to happen, meaning that something was seriously wrong. De Maurier told the pilot about the problem, at which point the co-pilot was instructed to investigate. The co-pilot determined that the problem could be remedied by stuffing pillowcases around the loose parts of the seal. Just a few minutes later, de Maurier got on the intercom and instructed passengers to stow any loose items in preparation for landing. Right as she finished the announcement, the faulty door blew wide open and sucked her out into the open sky. Sadly, she fell to her death. The other flight attendant on duty was in the restroom at the time, and the restroom door blew open during the ordeal. She would have been sucked out of the plane just like her co-worker if two passengers hadn't sprung into action to keep her inside the aircraft. De Maurier's body was later found in a pasture in the small town of Farmington, Connecticut, just south of the flight's destination. Number 9. William Cohn. During the early 1980s, the now-defunct Pan American World Airways began receiving letters from customers and employees alike praising a flight attendant named William Cohn for his outstanding service. Staff members went to add the letters to Cohn's personal file, but it was nowhere to be found, and when they performed a more thorough search, they realized that nobody by his name had ever been employed by the airline. An investigation ensued, and detectives were shocked to discover that for 2 years, Cohn had posed as a flight attendant, saving himself an estimated $40,000 in airfare around the globe. He was actually a shop owner from Miami, and he managed to travel to London, Honolulu, Johannesburg, Hong Kong, and other major cities free of charge without arousing any suspicion from legitimate crew members. Cohn was caught by authorities for playing his role too well, rather than not good enough, and he tried to carry on the ruse even after it was clear that law enforcement had caught on to it. According to Detective Bill Sayers, Cohn continued to insist that he was a Pan Am employee while getting arrested. In addition to boarding flights in an attendant's uniform, Cohn also posed as an employee to buy discounted tickets. When he was in uniform, it was surprisingly easy to walk right past security and past other company workers without even being questioned. This would be highly unlikely to happen nowadays with the heightened security measures that have been implemented in the years since Cohn's arrest. Number 8. Julianne March. During a United Express flight from Chicago to South Bend, Indiana in 2022, passengers became so concerned about how one flight attendant was acting that some people pulled their phones out and hit record. One of the travelers who captured the bizarre behavior on camera was Aaron Sherb, who told the South Bend Tribune that he suspected 49-year-old Julianne March of being under the influence. Sherb described how the stewardess didn't make eye contact with passengers during boarding and how she appeared to be leaning against the galley. During the standard security announcement that happens at the beginning of every flight, her speech seemed very slurred. March, who's from Waukesha, Wisconsin, was reportedly bumping against seats as she walked up and down the aisle, checking the overhead compartments. Sherb also told the press that he watched a passenger strap March into her seatbelt when they noticed it wasn't secured. He said that the stewardess didn't get out of her seat the entire flight and that she appeared to be passed out. When the plane touched down in South Bend, Sherb voiced his concerns to one of the pilots. March was then met by 2 uniformed officers, and according to witnesses, she started crying when she saw them. She also allegedly said that she believed she was in Chicago when the officers asked her what city they were in. When she was ordered to take her breathalyzer test, her blood alcohol level was 0.204, 5 times the limit for airline employees, and as a result, she was charged with misdemeanor intoxication. Sherb said that United Airlines offered him compensation when he called the company out in a tweet, but that he felt the entire flight deserved to be reimbursed since everyone's safety was jeopardized. He also said that he hoped the company didn't outright fire March and that instead they offered her help for addiction. Number 7. Marsha Gay Reynolds. While working as a flight attendant for JetBlue Airlines in 2015, former beauty queen Marsha Gay Reynolds picked up an illicit side hustle, trafficking cocaine and drug money for Gaston Brown, a 42-year-old Jamaican national and a legal immigrant to the US. As someone who regularly passed through various airports, Reynolds was typically subjected to a much lighter screening process than the standard traveler, and her luggage was far less likely to be scrutinized. In early 2016, she picked up 27 kilos, 60 pounds of cocaine from Brown at LAX Airport in Los Angeles, just as she had several times before. But this time she was randomly selected for additional screening, which is when Transportation Security Administration agents open up a traveler's luggage and rifle through the contents. While being escorted to a secondary screening area, she dropped her luggage, took her shoes off, and ran. Reynolds went down an upward-moving escalator as she desperately attempted to get away from TSA officers. She remained on the run for nearly a week before surrendering to Drug Enforcement Administration agents at JFK Airport. The disgraced flight attendant spent the next several months in custody and ultimately pleaded guilty to one count of conspiracy to possess and distribute cocaine. Reynolds was given credit for time served and was released upon her sentencing. Brown was also charged in connection with the case and was sentenced to nearly 14 years in federal prison. Number 6. Michael Philippe. During a Virgin Atlantic flight from London to Orlando in 2002, a flight attendant named Michael Philippe exited a restroom and alerted his colleagues to a disturbing message scrawled across the mirror. It said, "America must die." Another message, written on an air sickness bag, praised Osama bin Laden and contained a bomb threat. The jumbo jet was diverted to Keflavik, Iceland, which was the nearest airport equipped to handle an aircraft of its size. No evidence of an actual explosive was found on the plane, but the major disruption to the flight containing 322 passengers was damaging enough. Philippe claimed he found the threatening messages, but after analyzing the handwriting and fingerprints at the crime scene, authorities accused him of being the culprit. He was arrested 2 months after the incident at Newark International Airport in New Jersey as he was about to start his shift on a flight to London. In the end, the former flight attendant pleaded guilty to making false statements and was sentenced to 5 years of probation. Number 5. Jonathan Tafoya Montano. During a flight from Dallas to Detroit in early 2016, American Airlines flight attendant Jonathan Tafoya Montano alerted crew and passengers to a fire that had broken out in one of the bathrooms. The 23-year-old sprang into action and extinguished the flames, much to the relief of everyone on board. Luckily, no one was injured. Air traffic controllers assigned emergency status to the flight and gave the aircraft landing priority. But all was not as it seemed. The incident sparked an investigation, and the FBI concluded that Tafoya Montano started the fire himself. Any other scenario was unlikely, since nobody had used the bathroom for at least 15 minutes before the fire started. Authorities didn't announce a motive, but some speculated that the suspect was trying to make himself look like a hero. Evidence at the scene indicated that he lit a paper towel ablaze using a big lighter. Tafoya Montano allegedly gave investigators several different stories about the fire before admitting to being the culprit behind the blaze. As a result, he was charged with destruction of aircraft or aircraft facilities and making false statements. After his arrest, he took a plane to Dallas, where he was living at the time. Prior to boarding, the judge sternly ordered Tafoya Montano to remain seated the entire flight, while a corporate security officer sat next to him. The court found him guilty, and he was sentenced to 15 months in federal prison, followed by 2 years of supervised release. Prior to the former flight attendant's career-ruining arrest, his only brush with the law was a DUI from 2 years earlier. He worked for American Airlines for about 1.5 years before the in-flight fire resulted in his termination. Number 4. Marcelo, Chavez, and Ronald Maldonado. 44-year-old Delta flight attendant Marcelo Chavez and his fellow flight attendant boyfriend, 35-year-old Ronald Maldonado, had just arrived at Miami International Airport from Brazil in 2022 when U.S. Customs and Border Protection randomly stopped them. While going through the off-duty couple's luggage, agents found 2 glass cosmetic containers filled with what they determined to be liquid ketamine and a drug called GBL. They also found a suspected stash of 41 methamphetamine pills. The suspects allegedly told border officials that they didn't know how the illicit substances wound up in their bags, but they admitted that they'd been using drugs in Brazil. Following their arrest, Delta Airlines issued a statement reassuring the public that the company was fully cooperating with law enforcement and that Chavez and Maldonado were suspended pending the case's outcome. Both men were charged with drug trafficking and their cases are ongoing. According to the most recent update, a judge ordered a special hearing for Chavez, during which he was required to prove that the $115,000 he posted for bond came from a legitimate source of income. Number 3. Carla Alvarado. 33-year-old Carla Alvarado was working as a flight attendant for JetBlue Airlines when she agreed to help a friend traffic heroin into the United States on an ongoing basis. She smuggled more than 2 pounds, 1 kilo of the drug from Bogota to Orlando by shaping it to make it look like chocolates and hiding it beneath a bodysuit she wore under her work uniform. She was apprehended by federal agents in late 2013 and agreed to help authorities catch her accomplice in order to lessen her own legal consequences. Upon completing her final job, she and her co-conspirator, Jorge Luis Alomar, were handcuffed at the scene to make it look as if she hadn't snitched. Afterward, both of them were taken into custody separately. During a search of Alomar's home, authorities discovered more than 200 grams, 0.44 pounds of heroin hidden beneath the carpet and in a bathroom ceiling vent. Both defendants pleaded guilty in the end, and Alomar was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison, while Alvarado received a 2-year sentence. Number 2. Rebecca Valley. While passing through a TSA line at Reagan National Airport in Arlington, Virginia in late 2022, Republic Airways flight attendant Rebecca Valley allegedly stole a passenger's gold bracelet. The 60-year-old, who lives in Wesley Chapel, Florida, was nabbed by authorities after the passenger went through the checkpoint and couldn't find her jewelry. She reportedly told authorities that the bracelet was worth around $8,000. Police and TSA agents reviewed security footage of the line and saw a woman in a flight attendant's uniform pick up the bracelet. They caught up with Valley at a nearby terminal and arrested her in connection with the alleged theft. She was charged with 1 count of grand larceny as a result. This wasn't the first time a flight attendant was caught stealing a passenger's valuables. In 2010, an Air France stewardess was arrested after arriving in Paris from Japan. The 47-year-old, identified only as Lucy R., was accused of stealing jewelry and credit cards from sleeping business and first-class passengers. She was apprehended following an investigation that was launched after 5 travelers from Japan discovered missing property and filed complaints with French police. Lucy reportedly admitted to 27 thefts, and evidence showed that she took the stolen jewelry to a pawn shop in France. Rebecca Valley's case appears to be ongoing, so the woman's official sentencing has yet to be seen. Number 1. Teresa White. 41-year-old Teresa White made the biggest mistake of her career in late 2022 when she allegedly attempted to board a flight with more than 3 pounds, 1.4 kilograms of fentanyl in her possession. The off-duty flight attendant from Dallas was stopped by security in a known crew member line at the San Diego International Airport, where the drugs were reportedly found taped to her midsection. While airline employees are typically allowed to skip past the normal security protocols that pretty much everyone else has to go through at an airport, they aren't exempt from random searches. And that day, White was the lucky pick. Authorities charged her with possession with intent to distribute, but that was just the beginning of her problems. In addition to landing herself on the wrong side of the law, she was fired from the airline she worked for. White initially pleaded not guilty to the charge, but that changed just weeks later when she entered a guilty plea. She now faces up to 20 years in prison and is scheduled to be sentenced in March of 2023. Would you rather see a flight attendant have a meltdown mid-flight or be considered guilty by association because a friend you were traveling with got into a heated argument with a stewardess? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed today's video, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.